Hey everyone, this is People of Substance by LemonSkies. I'm Olga, and my guest today is Christopher Masak. So Christopher is Director of Advocacy at the Alzheimer's Association. I'll give you a chance to introduce yourself, but you and I have been running in the same circles for many years, and we just recently actually finally met face to face. So hi, Christopher.
Hello, hello.
So let me throw you a very easy question to get us started. How did you end up in nonprofit space? How did you make your way to advocacy?
I stumbled my way into it almost by accident. So years and years ago, I had a long but not so storied career in retail sales.
Mm-hmm.
And I went into grad school hoping to extricate myself from that career, and a practicum was required.
Mm-hmm.
And as part of that, I ended up with an internship at the American Lung Association at their the state level, engaging there. And we basically sort of gradually morphed that internship into a part-time position, full-time position. And I began working in the anti-tobacco movement and the health movement as part of the Lung Association, and then projects that were actually funded by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. So it was just something that really came out of necessity. At one point, I was the only person in the building who knew how to reboot the server when it crashed. So I began helping on the technical side of things. So I think a title of Manager of Technical Operations appeared, and I began helping build websites and do other things out of just pure necessity. And so as that position turned into a paid gig, and then I would even say multiple paid gigs simultaneously, my had pivoted away from what was eventually going to be either a legal career or a career in public administration. It sort of took me into the nonprofit space, but more specifically into the advocacy and engagement space. And so from there, I just continued working with some voluntary health organizations. I got into the tech sphere pretty heavily and immersed myself there. And it's been almost 2 decades later, I'm still around.
So did you ever hold the title of webmaster? Because that's probably the most 90s turn of the century thing.
Yeah, I avoided that title, although for a while, I think the title Web Ninja popped up, and I was a little intrigued by that because who doesn't want to be a ninja? That's a childhood dream, I guess. But no, I never got webmaster. I did, however, have varying quality titles thrown at me over the years that I would not repeat.
Sure. So let me ask you this. So technology obviously evolved quite a bit since I think you and I started in this field around the same time. What has changed in how we advocate for policies?
I mean, some of the core elements are still there. It's this idea of people delivering a message, to policymakers, and not just a message, a story. I think that's the core element that stayed true throughout. But the mechanisms have certainly changed. There was a moment when we relied on fax machines, maybe a little too heavily. The stories of melting a machine down, or people screaming at us on the phone because thousands of pages were spewing out of a machine. Those days, thankfully, are gone, or at least diminished pretty dramatically. So fax machines are no longer a huge part of our arsenal. But things like email and web forms, obviously the social media sphere, those are things that emerged over time and took on varying degrees of importance. And some would still debate how important each of those spheres are, but that's really what's changed the most, the pure technology or the experience. I think there's also there's this weird, I don't want to say weird, but there's a difference between the expectations of the people helping deliver the message. Mm-hmm. So for a time, you had lobbyists who kind of dictated very specifically, this is what elected officials want to hear. They were the gatekeepers. And nothing got past them if it wasn't the pure legalese, the white paper, the precision message that frankly might have been a little boring. And now with social media and with, I think, just societal attitudes towards their elected officials that have changed, you're seeing the walls come down. You are seeing people, for better or worse, take the filters off. And they will sometimes be very blunt and very direct with elected officials. And that can be good or bad. As an example, in the Alzheimer's sphere, people, they used to have a stigma around sharing personal anecdotes, specifically with this disease and how devastating it can be. And so they would speak in code, or they would speak in a very controlled way about, dad's not feeling great and he's struggling. Mm-hmm. Now, a lot of folks, the gloves have come off, and they will tell you that, they will get very express about that experience, incontinence and other things that were taboo subjects that you would not bring up are laid out there, laid bare, for a variety of reasons. And it can be very beneficial. So that's what I've seen mostly, is the shift in tone and delivery, and then some of the technology as well.
I love what you said about the power of story. And the delivery method has changed, but the story hasn't. But the stories have gotten more authentic, real, unvarnished. I mean, I think some of the shame maybe and some of the embarrassment is gone. I think there's just, in general in society, there's more willingness, in the conversations we're hearing about mental health and suicide and all sorts of topics. It seems like it's a new way of speaking about very hard topics.
Absolutely. I'll just say the growing up male in America is, the machismo, thing played a big role for a lot of men in their formative years. And so their willingness to express vulnerability, their willingness to talk about, the need for help, whether it's mental health or healthcare in general, that's an experience. Yeah. Women opening up about, subjects that maybe used to get pushed to a side, struggles after pregnancy or other things. There's all these different factors. It's not just healthcare, but people openly speaking, it's really changed a lot of dynamics, and it's opened people's eyes to the severity of certain problems.
Mm-hmm. So for skeptics out there, right? So when it comes to grassroots advocacy and engaging in policy, there's definitely some skepticism about, are politicians really listening, or is my email or signature on petition, is that meaningful? And, I think as nonprofits, we do bear a little bit of responsibility for it, because sometimes some of the petitions, they would be really an engagement mechanism without a super meaningful action behind them. So we do bear some of that. But what would you say to the skeptics?
I think they're right to be a little bit skeptical at times. Yes, the never-ending cycle of petitions can wear people down sometimes, and they feel, yeah, I've been there, done that. I think one of the biggest flaws with that, though, is that it's maybe that they're not hearing the end result. Mm-hmm. We will often reach out to people, and I say we in the industry, but we'll reach out to people and say, sign this petition to prevent this horrible legislation from passing. And then it's crickets, and people on their own have to go find out if the thing passed or not. So the follow-up is often lacking. And I think that's where some of the skepticism comes from. They feel they were just marketed to for a while, and that was it. Mm-hmm. The other part of that is, specific to the, our legislators or policymakers listening. We know they are listening by the simple fact of, if you're not in a space, mm-hmm. someone else is. Yeah. And so you can see that, whether it's in the media landscape or other things, where false messages or just really, really maybe factually incorrect things rise to the top because no one or few people jumped out ahead of it, raised their hand and said, that is patently false. I'm laying down a marker here, and I will be brave enough to say that this is an objective truth, and we're gonna defend it staunchly. So when it comes to policymakers, they're human.
Mm-hmm.
They field incoming information, and if what's incoming is all garbage, it's garbage in, garbage out kind of thing. And so I think that's where in the nonprofit space in particular, our advocacy campaigns need to follow up with people and make them feel like they're part of a movement. And we need to be really cognizant about the fact that we're not putting garbage out. We
Mm-hmm.
are what we're putting out there is verifiably true. It's it's valid information in all angles, and that's not just endless factoids. Same thing with stories. You don't want to tell made up stories. You don't want people to lie to people. So wherever possible, it's the overused word, but the word that is true is authenticity. Mm-hmm. Authenticity matters. It's the core of all of it.
Well, and when it comes to authenticity now, especially with the artificial intelligence, I'm reading about some of the charities using images that are not authentic, and it's well intentioned, at least I think it is, but it definitely puts in question everything we put out because it doesn't feel real.
Yeah, I can say I've played with some of the tools to generate, graphics and heck, even content at times. And while interesting, at the end of the day, if I were to ever say, look at this volunteer, look at their experience and read their story, and it turns out that were not real, not true, mm-hmm. They were, a made up cartoon character. That's devastating. It is, number one, to my credibility, but also to the organization, to mm-hmm. the movement, to the issue at hand. We don't want to be in that space. Now, that doesn't mean that people can't. People can spot a stock photo. Sure. So generating a stock photo for the back of a brochure or something like that is not necessarily a devastating tactic, but putting that image front and center of a campaign and then identifying it with a real person is where those risks lie. And I think organizations need to be very cognizant of that. People are still able, regardless of where the content's coming from, to spot marketing. Absolutely. When you're watching a movie and the Coca-Cola truck drives by in the background that was placed there. We can pick that out. Right. And so it's kind of the same thing when it comes to AI or any of the content we're generating. It's very blatant right now. Now the lines will blur over time, but I still think the truly authentic stories, voices, images will win out.
It feels like we're on very unsteady ground as we're trying to navigate all of this because there's no playbook. It's all very new and it's developing. So it just feels like trying to gain our balance and see, but you can do this, but should you do this? So it's sort of, it will probably take us a little while to do that. But I want to go back to the point you made, earlier, and the nuance of not just advocating for certain policies, but it's almost like what you're describing is preventing the harms of misinformation. And I found that to be, I just haven't thought of it quite in such a way that advocacy, yes, you're encouraging action on particular funding or particular policy, but you're also trying to get ahead of something that may be misrepresenting things.
Oversimplification, which my mantra usually is to simplify things down mm-hmm. to their core, right? You want the bumper sticker, not the novel, yes. Oftentimes in campaigns. But sometimes that oversimplification leads people to go down the wrong path. They mm-hmm. make assumptions because there's just not enough there for mm-hmm. them to understand nuance. When we're in a cycle of digesting information in 30-second sound bites, or 2-minute clips instead of long form journalism or other things, it's very easy for people to pick up the headline and mm-hmm. run with that. So when a new drug comes onto the market, mm-hmm. Or when a new fact is found out about, through some research thing, people really struggle sometimes with how they digest that. That's why everyone believes that, from moment to moment, broccoli cures cancer, broccoli causes cancer, broccoli will make you sprout wings or other things. It's that problem that we're that are fighting all the time. And so sometimes being a little patient and making sure you've got all your ducks in a row, you've thought about it, you've done, I don't want to say opposition research, but something along those lines of you've thought about the potential pitfalls of putting new information out there, and you've done it appropriately, methodically, steadily, and then you stick with it. You don't try something and then immediately abandon ship. You stick with that authentic voice, those facts. I think it wins out. There are times when organizations are maybe fearful of scandal or fearful of dipping their toes into some dangerous waters, and they don't do it, and another voice swings in there and takes over, and now it's too late. That's a problem.
And it's not black and white, right? Sometimes it's the nuance and the detail that kind of paints it and frames it in a different way. So it's sort of that shaky ground again, kind of perception and how it's addressed. Well, let me, at the top of the hour, Christopher, I mentioned that you and I have been running in the same circles for quite some time, and we have some peers, colleagues, friends in common that we both have known for many years. I think nonprofit space, and especially health space, is it's a very close-knit community. So the question that I've been pondering, and I've been fortunate to have people like Amy, our mutual friend Amy, getting to know you and a number of others in my life. How do you find nonprofit peers and form really meaningful and lasting relationships that are collaborative, where you learn, exchange ideas, where it's really sort of not a surface? I don't love the word networking. It's not about networking. It's about kind of more meaningful and more lasting professional friendships.
So speaking purely for me, I am absolutely terrible at what we would call small talk. I tend to be the one to maybe, for lack of a better phrase, I throw the grenade into the room. So when a conversation starts or when I meet new people, I'm saying whatever comes to the top of my mind and what I feel like saying, if only for pure entertainment value.
Religion, politics,
Start with the taboos and work back from there. But put it out there. And when that's getting back to the thing I said earlier, that gets back to that vulnerability. You're opening up a door that someone was not expecting to see, and they go, "Oh, I'm allowed to walk through that. We can do this." And I find that oftentimes people are either extremely repelled by that or very attracted to that in a conversation, because from a work standpoint, it now you have free brainstorming. Now people feel protected or safe to express any idea in a room because you laid down that marker of anything goes or most things go. That helps people become colleagues. It helps people build trust. They know that if you have that behavior, if you have that openness to ideas and true exchange versus the controlled, maybe politeness or otherwise, I found that a lot of people respond to that. And it's not always appreciated, but it certainly has found me some great folks over the years that I have loved to work with, and then also just become personal friends with. So I think just the willingness to have the conversation that's not necessarily about the weather or the insert local sports team here. I think that is a bridge to building relationships.
A bridge or a screener, maybe at times.
Or a screener, yeah, absolutely.
You spend time in health space at with the American Lung Association, American Cancer, obviously now working with Alzheimer's. What are some causes or issues that you personally are involved in, invested in? Are there, outside of that health space, maybe causes in your community that are close to you?
There have been a number over the years and a lot of things that I stick with. So I started actually in undergrad getting involved in like Students for Environmental Awareness. So environmental causes or animal rights causes are always near the top of the list of things that I will contribute to or volunteer for and get engaged with. I'm also, I've served in a lot of capacities on local school councils. I am right now serving on my homeowners association board. Youth athletics. I'm a coach. I've coached, sports, not just for my kids, but for others as well. So those are things that I'm passionate about. Truthfully, there are, you talk about sometimes taboo subjects. I'm just going to lay out there. I am a proud, prominent atheist, and some have even described a militant atheist at times. So I am not shy about separation of church and state issues, and putting my marker down in those spaces as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I was going to say, to go back to youth sports for a second, if you can navigate that, you can navigate anything. So.
You said it. That's it. Yeah, I know you've had plenty of experience in that realm, and it's you're navigating players, you're navigating leagues and logistics, you're navigating parents and the community. The parents being usually the biggest issue. So yeah, it's fun times there.
So just to wrap up our conversation, Christopher, we play a little game called Two Truth and a Lie. And I'll tell you why. It's a fun way to complete these conversations. And it's also that I'm always surprised what comes up, because there are definitely topics I don't think to ask. Like maybe you have a, menagerie of pets, or maybe you play some very obscure instrument. So there are definitely things that come about when I ask this question. Do you know how to play?
I do.
So you will give me 3 statements. 2 are truthful, 1 is a fib, and I will try to spot the fib.
Okay. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right. I played in a heavy metal band. I was featured in a Sandra Bullock movie. And I am a massive soccer fan.
So I'm going to say that the band is factual, and partially because I was snooping before I got on to just find your bio, and I saw something about a band, but I didn't realize it was metal. So that's true.
That is
yes.
True.
I sincerely hope that Sandra Bullock is true, but I'm going to go with soccer fanhood being. I'm going to go with soccer.
You are correct. However, the Sandra Bullock thing is almost true. My mother's feet are featured in a Sandra Bullock movie.
Which movie?
Love Potion #9.
Okay.
There is a scene in the movie where Tate Donovan, the lead male actor, is speaking in a grocery store, and you see feet walk across the screen. He, of course, has a love potion sprayed in his mouth, and the feet stop walking and turn. And those are my mom's feet.
That's her claim to fame.
Her claim to fame, her big screen debut. Yes.
And what's your team for soccer, or some?
So I have domestic and foreign leagues. So domestically, it's Atlanta United, and I'm an Atlanta sports fan, and I've also supported all the local Atlanta teams over the years: the Beat, the Attack, you name it. The Ruckus. But internationally, I support a German club called Karlsruhe SC. They're in the 2nd division of the Bundesliga, and Arsenal in the English Premier League. That's the team most folks would know.
Yes, familiar. Christopher, it was delightful to have you on. I really appreciate it, and spending a few minutes with you, getting to know you. So thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. This has been a blast.
See you soon.
Take care.